today's podcast is a special one for me. And he's not just an incredible strength and performance coach. He's actually one of the hardest working uh, uh, coaches when it comes to his craft and also his clients. He's provided massive results for his athletes. He is also a goalkeeper who played at the collegiate level and the UPSL level, who's also working on breaking into the pro level, and a coach at our all out residential camp as well. He also happens to have the last name that is similar to my name. So I'd like to welcome you, my son, Marcos Papakostas, with AFA Sports Performance. Let me bring him on stage here. Welcome, Marcos.
Hey, glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I want you to share your story because I want to know when you started lifting, why did you start lifting weights? Okay. Um, and how it helped you mentally, but also how it helped you become a goalkeeper and the athlete you are today. I think people will appreciate you being in this profession, especially when you have the story that you had. So go for it.
Yeah, so um, I think around like 13, 14, I started working out. I didn't really uh, know anything about anything of what exercises do what. I just knew I wanted to be, bigger. I wanted to be stronger at a smaller frame. I'm shorter as a goalkeeper, but just, as a human, as a kid growing up. All I knew was bodybuilding because that's the basics of gym. So just I've kind of used YouTube, I used Google, I used whatever I could just to see like how do I, get a big chest or get a stronger, stronger back, bigger arms, all that stuff. But then as I got older, um, I wanted to shift more towards performance-based lifting, which is known as more like powerlifting, so strength training. So I wanted to I wanted to have a stronger squat. I wanted to have a stronger bench. I wanted to have a stronger deadlift. I just wanted to be a stronger person. So it was more about performance and less about appearance. And then kind of going as a goalkeeper and as an athlete through high school, I noticed that the way you lift and what you do when you lift can help you as an athlete, not just getting stronger, but helping you on the field with speed, with jumping, with all this other stuff. So I shifted more towards kind of high rate of speed lifting. There's a difference between powerlifting and lifting as an athlete. Some of it crosses over, but um, the biggest thing was seeing how I can use the gym to help me, first of all, mentally as an athlete. It helped me kind of growing up through high school and stuff like that, helped me release a lot of my, any type of mental drainage or deep times. Working on myself is a huge thing for me, getting through tough times. And especially as a goalkeeper, um, when you kind of feel like a lone man on the field, or it's a lone profession. um, it helps a ton when you work on yourself. It kind of gives you that confidence boost. um, and then just from there transforming into just having a passion for it. And I wanted to take that experience that I got in the gym and what I learned by myself through trial and error for 7, 8, 9 years, to other people, through training, and then eventually um, ended up doing it as a job.
Awesome. That's a great story. So you graduated in college with what degree?
So it's a degree. It's a bachelor's of science in exercise science, but the concentration is sports performance. So performance includes speed training, strength training, mass training, all volumes, volume programming, understanding volume management. So performance encompasses every aspect of an athlete in all sports.
Awesome. And what does you opened up your own business? You're very successful. You're working with a lot of athletes in a lot of sports. Um, I know you're busy from the morning all the way at night. Great success. What does AFA stand for?
Yeah, so before it was AFA Sports Performance, it was just applying functional anatomy. So going through school and through my degree, I found my deepest passion and my favorite literature and knowledge was in anatomy. Anatomy was my favorite. Anatomy is still my favorite. Understanding the body and understanding all the intricate details of how the body moves and how it works and how muscles work together was something that I just fell in love with from the very first course. Even before, when I was studying as an engineer, before I changed my majors, I was loving just on my own. I was studying anatomy. So my foundation for starting a company of training was my love for taking the base of anatomy and of the human body, and with that understanding of how that works, how can we use that understanding to do exercises and take the gym and utilize resistance training, whatever type of training, um, based off of that knowledge of how the body works and what it's made up of to get the best results out of it. Whether it's, you want to be more active, you want to, as an older person, may have it easier to go up the stairs or get off the couch or play with the kids or change the load of laundry, or as an athlete, sprinting better, jumping better, moving better. So it's that basic knowledge. It's applying functional anatomy, which is what I do on a day-to-day basis every single day. Is I apply my understanding of anatomy to a functional process, and apply that to what is your goal as an athlete or as an individual. And with that knowledge, I apply. So that's why the company is applying functional anatomy. And then as I move towards athletes, now it's just AFA Sports Performance.
Awesome. That's great. You mentioned a couple of things because now we're going to go into the nitty gritty of just really educating people in regards to, strength, conditioning, maybe eliminate some of the myths or maybe mistakes when it comes to strength training. Everybody today, unfortunately, is an expert at strength training. They get a certification, the personal training. And again, I'm not bashing personal trainers. We need them. But you mentioned about having a base. If you don't understand how the body works, how it works mechanically, how it works physiologically, how you load, how your body responds, you're not really helping anybody. And I think that's I think that's very important. So everybody now, as you see, the biggest growing element right now in sports and athletes and youth is that private training session, those extra sessions that I like to call it the competitive advantage. And science tells us there is a competitive advantage if it's utilized correctly, if it's incorporated correctly, if it's done by somebody who understands, where you can calculate the movements, you can customize the movements to that profession, that sport, that position, that age. Uh, you know, so it's exciting times for athletes today compared to 30, 40 years ago. But you also have to be careful depending on who you're working with. There are injuries associated with, strength training or conditioning, whether it's speed or plyometrics. And we're going to go over all of that as well, too. But it's important because a lot of people are asking, in-season sessions, off-season sessions, post-season, what can we do or can't we do? How do we do it? So, obviously this is not going to be a 4-hour session because we won't even be able to cover it in 4 hours. So it's really about giving a foundation and giving kind of shedding some light with some answers. And then, people will feel better about, again, what to apply, when to apply it. We're going to talk a little bit about nutrition. We're going to talk about a couple other things, but let's get into some of the myths when it comes to strength training. And when we say strength training, again, that could be weight training, that could be resistance training, that could be plyometrics, that could be a lot of different things, right? So here's a myth, and I hear this often, right? And usually these are old school coaches, that maybe we didn't have the science. I say I would include that, but obviously I'm always continuously learning, evolving, growing. Um, Strength training leads to overuse injuries. Okay. Now, it can, if you don't know what kind of strength training you're doing. But I also believe it's a myth, because I believe strength training, and it's a well-designed strength training program, could prevent injuries from happening, right? So that's the myth, that's the truth. So tell us more about strength training during the in-season training for goalkeepers.
Sure. So first of all, we have to get on the same basis on what strength training is. And again, like you said, I don't want to pick on trainers, but a lot of times I'll have athletes and parents come to me and they sign up and they had a previous, strength trainer, but what they did was bodybuilding. That's not the same as strength training. But they think that, and again, bodybuilding in itself is not poor for athletes. It just has to be timed right. And you have to have someone that knows what they're doing. And most of the time that's going to be taking place in the off season. But strength training is trying to get your muscles to move a higher force, right? Create move with a stronger ability. And so sometimes the thing is, the research shows that the number one thing that prevents injuries is strength training. Number one. So a lot of times, I think the bigger problem when it comes to overuse injuries, a lot of times, is doing your sport with too much volume, or because a lot of times we can see now that if you're an athlete and you engage in multi sports, you see overuse injuries go down because you expose your body to more complex patterns and different patterns, so the tendons get to move and work in different ways. But strength training alone has been shown to either both in season and out of season to be the number one thing that prevents injuries, because you're allowing that tendon to get exposed to that type of stimulus of high force, whether it's high force with high speed or high force with low speed, but more volume, or excuse me, more load. Um, that's been the number one thing, and especially with my experience and experience of all coaches, um, there's been a little bit of an evolution turning more towards speed training, and I can see it. But besides speed training, the number one type of training that every athlete should be doing, number one of all sports of all ages, is strength training. So I think that view of overuse might be more of an over volume problem, and that doesn't come from the strength training. That comes from the overall look of what is this athlete, what is this youth athlete or whichever athlete, what are they going through on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, what is the volume that they're taking. That's a bigger proponent, and a bigger sign of an overuse injury than just adding in strength training once a week.
I agree. We're also going to go into this, but I also believe overuse is also associated, in my opinion, also undernourished when it comes to nutrition as well too.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll cover that as well. A lot of people say, well, how often should I be training? How can I add another strength training session when I'm already training 3 or 4 times a week? I'm doing team training, I'm doing goalkeeping training twice a week. I'm a big believer that the people that are actually holistically developing the goalkeeper is incorporating some type of strength training, maybe through plyometrics within their sessions, on a weekly basis. But if we believe that strength training gives you the competitive advantage, you're going to have to find time, if it's not incorporated with your team training, because there isn't a coach who incorporates that or can incorporate it, or maybe doesn't have the knowledge to incorporate it. Give us the reasoning why, if people want to get to that next level, or want to advance their progression of their goalkeeping, how important it is to really make that time for them to seek out somebody to help them with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the misconception too is that you have to spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week in strength training, and that's just not the case. A quick 30, 35 minutes, strength. And again, you have to know what you're doing, but exposing your muscles and your movement patterns to that high rate of force development and that high load so that you have a body that wants to now change your body and heal the body in a way that can perform that same movement again, but with more force, right? That's what the strength training is. It's just in the studies. There was a study performed just recently on I believe it was soccer players that did strength training once a week versus strength training once every other week versus not strength training at all. And the difference between strength training and not strength training was huge. But what's even greater was the strength training once a week versus once every other week. Just taking 1 week off was enough to have their gains decrease by half. They lost half of their strength. Just by not strength training, taking a 1 week off of that, and that applies to your sprinting ability. So if you're able to squat heavy, a lot of times you're able to jump higher, stronger on the ball. As a goalkeeper, you're stronger to get the ball out of the air on an aerial ball. It's that type of strength that you expose your body to that makes you a better athlete. And again, it doesn't have to be 2, 3, 4 times a week. And even the session doesn't have to be 45 to an hour. It could be a 30-minute session. As long as it's the stimulus you're exposing to the body is enough to create changes. And that once a week, again, just once a week was enough to double your gains, even if you compared to doing once every other week. But even if you can do once every other week, even that is better than not doing it at all.
Yeah, that's true. So again, it's not, a lot of people are saying, hey, we only did, 55 minutes rather than an hour, that extra 5 minutes. And I think a lot of people just understand, they think more is better, more is better. Um, and that's through ignorance. Again, it's not their fault. They just don't know. They just think, they believe if you can give them more, they should be able to do more. And if they do more, they'll actually grow more. So you got to really be careful. But so basically what you're saying is short intensive workouts can be very effective if you're focusing on specific needs during the in-season period, right? So it's obviously, again, goes back to calculating and addressing the weaknesses that if you can repetitively load them during in season, it's only going to do nothing but help you, especially that injury prevention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is too, I think nowadays we have, and I'm going to specifically speak to soccer or even goalkeepers, where we feel that it's actually we would rather choose another sports skill coach outside of team training, and we think that that's going to be better. Let's say if you practice with the team 3 times a week and you have goalkeeping a fourth time on a week, and so now my job as a parent, you see it right now, is let me get another specialized skill coach, but not a strength coach. And I would argue that that's actually more detrimental. And I would say that is where you're going to see those overuse injuries, because if you're diving with that intensity 5, 6 days a week, but you're not getting that strength training, that's when you're going to see that overuse injury. And I would say it's actually a greater advantage if you actually seek out at least a strength coach that would take place of that skill. You would actually see more benefits in their performance, instead of getting another skill coach or another keeper session in. You actually will see decreased benefits.
Awesome. Well, let's shift over to speed training because obviously, we're talking about strength training. We also know speed training is very valuable to a goalkeeper or actually any athlete. Um, they're different. Can or should they do it together in a session? Should they be doing it separately? Do I get a strength training coach and then get a speed coach? Can a strength and speed coach, do they exist as one? And can they do it within season?
Yeah. So me personally as a coach, I have kind of evolved in seeing the massive gains and the massive benefits and the priority of prioritizing speed training for every single athlete, regardless of sport. Because of the benefits, I was on a webinar with Universal Speed Rating, and his coach, his name's Coach Tony Holler. He's referred to as the father of speed, but he went over and he kind of shifted my lens on speed training. And honestly, speed training doesn't last more than 15 minutes, and if it does, you're not doing it right. And that's a really good thing for parents and athletes to hear, because you can fit that in. 15 minutes is nothing in the weekly time. But as a goalkeeper, I actually wrote it down here, is that's a huge myth with goalkeeping. Is we understand, a lot of people believe as goalkeepers you don't need speed training, because when am I running? I'm sitting in the penalty box. But I mean, I could pick a few moments when you come for a 1v1, or you're coming out for an aerial ball that's maybe more than 6 yards. You're sprinting to that ball. But even outside of that, speed alone is the ultimate plyometric. We know that sprinting, you're putting the force you place into the ground is about 6 times your body weight, and that's really hard to recreate in a gym setting, even with jumps, or even with a weighted plyometric. That's really hard to recreate. Um, so the adaptations that we want to see in the hamstring and the lower body muscles can only be produced from speed training or from maximal sprints. And like you were saying, do I need a speed coach or a strength coach? I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, you're going to need both. What's cool about what we do over here is that we do it all. We incorporate speed training and strength training and power training and mass training all together over here at AFA Sports Performance. But as an athlete, you do need, and I will say you do need, if you want to play at the next level, speed training and strength training together, and they absolutely can go together. Now, the timing and how you programming it is very important, because a lot of times if you're tired, you're not training speed. So if you strength train before you speed train, then you're really not speed training, you're just conditioning. So again, you have to have someone that knows how to program and how to train speed. So here, I'll give you an example here. At one of our sessions, at any one of our sessions we do here, in season, out of season, I mean, depending on the timing and the annual phase that the athletes are in. Over here, we almost every session starts with 15 minutes of speed training. And that's because we can get that stimulus. They're fresh, they've warmed up. Once they open their hips, they're ready to speed train. So we get that in, and that's all we need for that session. And sometimes it's only 12 minutes, sometimes it's only 10 minutes, and then we immediately get into the strength training. And what's really cool about that too is that speed training actually primes their nervous system, and it primes their muscles, and they actually end up performing better in their strength training and the rest of their training, because their body is now prepped to develop high rates of force in their body. So it's almost like two birds with one stone. So not only are we getting faster, which we're seeing with our graphs, right? I test them every 6 weeks. They're sprinting faster, they're moving faster, they're jumping higher, and that's only from 12 to 15 minutes of speed training at the beginning of our sessions. So that alone, any athlete can get that in. So yes, speed training and strength training, absolutely, both in season and out of season. Now again, how you programming it is very important. So you have to know and go to a coach that knows what they're doing. But absolutely, over here, you just need 15 minutes a week of speed training, especially as a goalkeeper. You need to be able to produce high rates of force and in a split second, whether it's a save or a dive or an aerial ball or moving left and right to get down for a ball. And you just can't recreate that amount of force in a regular plyometric. It only comes from sprinting, max sprinting.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about it, because we talked about plyometrics, and people are excited about. I love plyometrics. It's an Eastern European methodology of 60, 70 years that now gets incorporated with many athletes. I'm a big proponent of it, especially with goalkeepers. It's how we developed our Increase Your Vertical Jump program with some plyometrics that are involved, along with footwork and high repetitions and stuff like that. So, okay, so when you're doing plyometrics, we're focusing on explosive power, speed, right? Through jumping, right? Jumping and skipping and hopping movements, right? Involves rapid kind of stretch, followed by contraction of muscles. And so that helps with speed, it helps with agility, explosiveness, and stuff like that. But strength training can do that as well too, through building muscle endurance, muscle strength, whether it's resistant bands, whether it's isokinetic, isotonic, isometric contraction, whichever contractions you're focusing on based on what you're trying to do. But they're being challenged to work against resistance, which builds obviously the strength and also the endurance. Okay. That's where you get mass, that's where you improve strength. That's how you enhance the activity, the sport, the position. And also, again, you got to be careful because that can produce, injuries if you don't know what you're doing. But if you know what you're doing, that can actually prevent injuries. Okay. So where do you fit plyometrics with a combined strength and speed training? Can you also combine plyometrics, right? Would that be a three focuses and elements within a training session?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, plyometrics, we use plyometrics all the time, especially as an athlete. The way that we form, and I just posted a reel about this on our Instagram, is that our contrast training method is very, very popular at top universities, D1, D2, NCAA strength coaches, even professional, MLS, MLB, all these strength coaches. It's very common because it's basically what it is combining a plyometric with a strength training exercise back to back. And it's really good for efficiency because if you don't have time, again, there's ways that you can do this where it doesn't have to be an hour session. It's a 45-minute session if you're doing back to back. But what's really cool about goalkeepers is plyometrics doesn't just apply to the lower body, but it applies to the upper body as well. So we know that plyometric is just it's performing a movement, but the speed, we want to maximize the speed, right? The speed is the number one, is the heart of the plyometric. So when we do lower bodies, a lot of times it's gravity. You're fighting gravity. Even with upper body, a lot of times it's gravity. But what's really cool is as goalkeepers, um, um, the focus is also upper body plyometrics as well. But before we get into it, I'll talk about the training session, right? And I talked about earlier, we did 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes of speed training at the beginning of the session. Then the rest of the session, most of the time, unless you're like in a preseason or in season where we need to get some agility work or change of direction, usually we take care of that beforehand. But the rest of the session is going to be plyometric and strength training. So it's the 15 minutes of speed. The rest is plyometric and strength training, and that's that kind of contrast method known as French contrast method. That's the method that's really popular. That's the method that we use. But plyometrics are combined with every strength training. So just as much strength training, we do just as much plyometrics, and that helps. And at the end of the day, it actually helps. They help each other. So we know that your ability to perform a rapid movement like a jump, like a plyometric, can be limited by your strength. So if you get your strength up, you can jump higher. But there's also studies that have recently come out that shown that actually, if you're able to produce it faster, you actually can create more force, which actually makes you stronger. So they actually feed off of each other. A lot of times we believe that a heavier squat makes you able to jump higher. Now we're seeing that actually your ability to jump higher can give you a stronger squat. So they kind of feed off of each other, and that's kind of the really cool thing about it. Is they kind of, you can program them together so you get both the gains of explosiveness and rate of force development, but also the strength on top of that, which you basically take that strength and you turn it into power and you turn it into speed. And so again, going over, this is goalkeeper specific. With goalkeepers, you can do upper body plyometric, which is like a med ball throw, or you do a push up into a jump push up off of your hands, or you do a pull up with speed, or you do an inverted row with speed, or as a goalkeeper, obviously we're using our upper body to catch the ball, using to above your head to catch the ball, or to hold the ball when you're making contact with an attacker. So the way we program for like keepers or basketball players or volleyball players that have that need work on their upper body as well, you can also do plyometrics, not just strength training. But again, you can feed off of it, where you can do a strength powered by paired with a power exercise as a plyometric, and they feed off of each other as well. So as a goalkeeper, you can utilize both strength training and plyometric in both the upper and lower body.
Awesome. Well, I think the what we're trying to get here with this educational piece is just education and kind of, letting coaches as well as parents know that yes, you can be doing strength training, plyometric training, speed training in addition to your goalkeeping training sessions or your club team training sessions, high school, college, whatever that is. But we also are talking about knowing somebody who understands all those three elements, not just a trainer who's just trying to strengthen a muscle through, isotonic contraction of weights, right? Or isokinetic contraction through bands. So that's very important. That's why choose your, whether we call him the strength coach, uh, obviously I like the word sports performance, because if we're going to enhance the performance of any athlete, we have to include all three of those: speed, plyometrics, and strength, which
Mhm.
obviously involves power and stuff like that. So that was good. This is good. Again, we're just talking about foundations here. Let's move into another segment, which plays a significant role if you're actually maximizing strength, speed, and plyometrics, and that's nutrition, right?
Right.
So, your strength, or the ability to bring on mass, to bring on speed, to bring on explosiveness is only as good as what are you feeling that's kind of penetrating to your muscles, right? Which obviously gives them the food and the nutrients in order for them to endure, to contract, right? And we're not going to get into the science and at the cellular level, but I want this to be a big thing. And I know we educate this to goalkeepers, but nutrition, as much as is gaining some momentum, there's a lot of people who agree with it, but still have a hard time in making a commitment to implementing it. I noticed, obviously, you being my son, I noticed, from your high school years, mostly going into, as you're getting into the collegiate, you were getting into the collegiate year, what you ate was important to you, how consistent you were with your meals, with your prep, with, measuring your carbs and your protein versus your fat when you're actually eating it. Um, and so nutrition, dialing in nutrition is a huge competitive advantage. So if you're hiring a strength and conditioning coach and you're maxing out your training, your speed, your all that stuff, but you're not fueling your body correctly, you are going to get injured. You are going to get burnt out. You are going to be questioning, why am I not being able to do what I think I can do with my body? Now, we can talk about sleep, because that's another pillar that plays a significant role. But the nutrition, which is the fuel, right? The gas in the gas tank of your car. I mean, you can be slamming that gas pedal, but if there's no gas in the car, that car ain't going
Ain't going
anywhere,
nowhere.
right? It's not going anywhere. So obviously, this is years and years and years of educating, but um, game day nutrition. I know this is big. Okay. I know this is very big. And then I want to talk into, eating before practicing and also eating before game. What does game day nutrition mean? Like, how do we talk about, you know, eating? When do we eat a full meal? What can we eat a couple hours prior to a game, a match? Um, what can we be consuming during a game? And what does it look like after?
Yeah. So just kind of like a little overview, because you mentioned a lot of that stuff too. I think because nutrition as a whole is so complicated, and there's so much information, and you get, don't eat this but eat this, and you eat too much of this and too much of that. I make it very, 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 very simple with all the athletes. It's just the macros, and you just got to be aware. I have every athlete that signs up with me, they get two nutrition guides. One is what is food? What are the three macros? Carbs, fats, proteins. Okay. What are good sources of it? Okay. And what do they do? Like what does it do to your body, and why do you need it? And then they get another one, which is timing. Fuel your workout. What do you eat before? What do you eat during? What do you eat after? And why? Right. And I'll kind of quiz them, and I'll give them that little bit of education, but I make it real simple. Now, when it comes to game day, it would be the exact same as kind of what I have on that plan around your workout. So we understand um, what gives us energy is mostly carbohydrates. Your body utilizes carbohydrates as energy first and foremost, and it usually only uses it just for energy. So I think what's really cool about this position as a goalkeeper is you actually can kind of get away with eating a little bit closer to match time, only because of your energy systems that you're using. Um, because even though your warm up's going to be super high intensity, you won't get that epoch or that kind of that throw up feeling, because you're not going to hit into that aerobic capacity where you're doing a lot of muscular endurance work. So what you want is, for most athletes, it's going to be about 3 to 4 hours before your match. If you're a goalkeeper, you can get a little bit closer to that time if you'd like. But we're looking at mostly carbs. We need that meal to be at least 50 to 60% carbs, and about moderate protein. And the reason why we still want moderate protein is, and we don't want high protein, is because your body takes a lot of energy to digest it, and your body doesn't really like to use protein as energy. It can, but it usually doesn't. And especially as an athlete, it's probably not going to. But we are going to create some muscle breakdown. So you would like to have those stores not completely full, but a decent amount full, a decent amount filled, and usually low fats. We usually don't want to consume too many fats before a game. Again, it takes a really long time to digest. But we want those carbs. We want those carbs ready to fill the muscles. We want that muscle glycogen stores to be at moderate levels, so you can easily use it right before the game going into match time. You have enough time. 3 to 4 hours is about enough time to where it kind of settles in. You got the stores are kind of full, and you're not feeling that much in your stomach. Now, as a goalkeeper, again, we can have that leeway of having a little bit more of some snacks on hand. So if you're going to eat between the game, if you're someone that finds himself kind of low energy or want some snacks during the match or at halftime, you're looking at very quick carbs. Now, most of the time, I would say that these are not really good choices of carbs as energy, but because they get the glucose spiking, something like fruit snacks. But carbs only. We're not looking at any proteins or fats. We're looking at just quick carbs, small sugar, or even a sports drink, one that doesn't have a lot of artificial dyes and stuff like that, but has enough sodium and some carbs, right? So some decent sugars in there during the match, and then after the match, you want now we're looking at the same medium to high carbs, because you want to refill those stores because you just used all those energy stores. So you want to refill the stores with medium to high carbs, and then this is the time when you want to get that high protein, because we just had a lot of muscle breakdown, and protein is used to rebuild cells. And now, because we're going to sleep, we're going to rest, we're not doing high activity afterwards. It's okay. Your body's going to use a lot of energy to digest it, but that's okay, because we should be going to rest right after that. And then some good fats, unsaturated fats will be good for the nervous system health, just because of the load that you kind of place on a nervous system in the match. So as kind of like a summary, it'll be high carbs, medium protein before, 3 to 4 hours before, and then just beforehand or during the match, we're looking at just quick carbs, and then afterwards, we're looking at moderate to high carbs, and then some really high protein, and then low moderate fats.
Awesome. I was always a big proponent. I still there's a place for this, and I think even about an hour before the match, electrolytes, or even kind of very easy digestible carbs, like any type of fruit sauces or honey or even dried fruits, high sugar content, because again, we need the sugar, we need the glycogen in order for us to fuel our muscles to get them to activate. But electrolytes like sport drinks, again, I'm not a big proponent of Gatorade or Powerade. I would say Body Armor, maybe some other companies you feel are a little less, more on the sodium and the potassium, which is the electrolytes, which kind of gives you the zing of the muscle contraction, right? While the glycogen is your fuel to the muscle contraction. But I think those are always good to do, just before and during your sports competitions.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it depends on the level. Most of the time, kids will get that enough from their food. But if you're playing it at a high level, even in high school, college, or beyond, you're gonna want to, yeah, definitely get some sodium, calcium, potassium, all that good stuff, just beforehand. And the sugar too. The sugar is great too. A lot of people demonize sugar, especially when it comes to like liquid IV. I know liquid IV had a problem. People were saying that they had sugar in it, but the sugar in it has a purpose. it allows you to get that energy and also to absorb those electrolytes. So sugar is not a bad thing. Obviously, the type of sugar will depend. But the sugar is a lot of times is the carbs and it's that energy. So just beforehand, it's okay to have some type of sugar that spikes the glucose and kind of gets that blood flowing, and you can feel that energy right away because we're about to perform. It's different if you're taking it and you're about to go sit on the couch and watch TV for the next 3 hours. We really don't want that blood glucose to spike. But yeah, absolutely having some quick sugar, fruits, something to spike the blood glucose right before the game, and then the electrolytes as well, because you're definitely going to be depleted. And if not beforehand, then definitely at halftime.
Let's talk about a topic I know is huge, especially with goalkeepers as they're getting into that sophomore year. I give them a little bit more leeway in freshman year, but definitely going sophomore year and beyond. We talk about beefing up the goalkeepers, right? It's time that you got to start lifting weights, or you need to be bigger. And they may be strong, but the density of their frame, um, uh, appearance, so to speak, plays a significant role. We want them to add more weight, right? You keep hearing that. Why? Because it's beneficial to them, the contact, the preventing of the injuries, right? Um, and so we're talking about, okay, weightlifting, powerlifting. We're talking about, a lot of that, but we're not talking enough about nutrition, because if you're not adding calories, to that, you can do all the lifting you want. You'll get stronger, right? But if we want to build mass and we want to add more weight, that's something that I know you've done for yourself, but you've also done it to many of your clients, athletes as well. What's the breakdown of ratios of importance of focusing weight over nutrition? Nutrition, I know we need both, but somebody's looking at, hey, I need to add more weight. I need to be a little bit more bigger. Um, how do I go about doing that? Again, we're not looking, it has to be customized to that individual, but overall, what's the foundation of adding more mass and weight towards an athlete?
Sure, and I like to say this to I say this to people all the time. I could take the same, the two athletes, and I'll give them the exact same workout program, um, and then but if they eat completely differently, they will look completely different. Even though they'll both make strength gains, they'll both make a power gain, speed gains, whatever it is. But if one athlete eats double the amount of food, they're still going to be faster and stronger, but they're going to gain some size, and most of the time, it's not going to be fat; it's going to be muscle. And so that's why nutrition plays such a massive role. So as a goalkeeper, I think what's really cool is that as being someone myself, being a shorter goalkeeper, the weight room is your advantage, because a lot of times you can get stronger and jump higher and become more explosive. It's even more of a priority if size, is a problem for you. And we know in America, we want someone that's super big and super strong. And size doesn't necessarily mean you're stronger, but it does help you in a lot of instances. And so a lot of times, what I'll say is to the athletes is when they come to train or even anything, your body doesn't just create energy. It needs food to perform, and it needs food to recover as well. So you need to be eating a lot of food. Food's important. All my athletes by now, that I tell them three things: eat, sleep, and hydrate. I know we won't go over sleep here, but eat, sleep, and hydrate is what I tell them before they leave every single day, because they need to eat just to perform. Now, if you want to grow on top of that, you need to be eating even more. And I think a lot of times people are afraid of carbs because carbs makes you fat, but that's not necessarily true. As an athlete, your performance and a lot of times muscle growth depends on the amount of carbs that you eat. So as an athlete, if you as a goalkeeper and you're looking to trying to gain size, it's carbs and protein all the way. And I think a really good rule of thumb, I know you mentioned just kind of going over generally, if you're a goalkeeper trying to gain weight, at least try and shoot for eating your body weight in grams of protein. So that means if you weigh 150 pounds, then daily you need to be eating at least 150 grams of protein. And I was speaking to some of my athletes right now that I'm trying to gain weight. I had the 6'6" goalkeeper that was trying to put on some weight. It's really hard to get that amount of protein. Yeah, absolutely, it's hard. But if you think about it, let's say we know that protein is used just to build cells, just to exist. So in order for your liver to work, you need to eat protein so that it can rebuild the cells for your liver to work. So if you think about your first 125 grams of protein is just going to you existing, now it's a lot easier to think, okay, I'm only eating 25 grams. That's not enough to build my muscle. So I need to be eating more than that. So if you put that understanding that a lot of times 75 to 80% of what you're eating, if not more, is just going to your body, just existing and operating, you're going to need to eat more if you want to grow. So obviously you need to eat for the strength gains to recover. But if you want to grow on top of that, you got to be eating even more. And I think a lot of times athletes are afraid to overeat, especially female athletes, if they think, they might be overeating or gaining weight. But that's a lot of times that's just not the truth. Especially if you're training 3, 4, 5 times a week, you need to be eating
Mhm.
just enough so that your body doesn't have, like you were saying, those overuse injuries. Because if it doesn't have the fuel to create that contraction or to recover or to create those cells, that's a lot of times a bigger proponent of those injuries and not as much the overtraining.
That's great. I love what we're saying here. I'm like, I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface, but I know this is like kind of like great information for a lot of people to relate to their goalkeepers and also goalkeepers listening that are in high school and in college. Um, we got about 10 minutes left, and I don't want to rush, but at the same time, I'm trying to debate whether we talk about creatine or we talk about sleep and recovery. Let's talk about creatine because there's again a lot of people are afraid of creatine. What kind of creatine? How often can I take creatine? Does it really work? Creatine. I just know you have to eat with creatine. If you don't eat, creatine is only going to maybe give you something. But you've got to give the right fuel to your muscles in order for you to absorb other elements you're placing into your body. Because again, we're trying to maximize and have the competitive advantage as we're competing at the highest level. So um, uh, I know creatine has got the studies are out there. It's effective. It's safe. What type of creatine? How often can they take it, and why should they take it?
Yeah. Um, so obviously your body creates creatine naturally. So the number one thing that I tell everyone, because I get all the questions all the time, it's whatever you want it to do, it's going to do. Whatever you're doing, it's going to enhance that. So if your goals and you're training to lose fat and gain muscle, then creatine is going to help you lose fat and gain muscle. If you're an athlete that's trying to sprint faster, taking creatine is going to help you sprint faster. If you're trying to gain weight, if you're trying to put on mass, taking creatine is going to help you put on mass. So it's basically it enhances whatever you're doing, because all it's doing is restoring your ATP stores and giving you more energy. So that could be stronger, that could be more powerful, that can be more tension on the muscle, which means you're getting bigger. And it does have a little bit of water retention, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to look bigger off of doing that if that's not how you're training. So the studies show right now that it's going to be 5 grams daily, and most creatine supplements today, their scoops will be 5 grams. Now there's some studies that are showing that possibly more daily can be a benefit. But I think the reason why 5 grams is the recommendation is because it kind of shows that some people get some stomach problems because your body likes to, when it absorbs it, kind of give you some stomach problems, like some aches and pains. But for most of the general population, 5 grams is not going to do it for you, but it's still going to give you an effectiveness, a dose of 5 grams. So for all the anyone, even all athletes, of course, but anyone that takes creatine, it's 5 grams a day, every single day, um, forever. You don't need to double up if you skip a day. If you skip 2 days, you don't need to double up. You just take 5 grams every single day. Now you're not going to see the benefits of it, because it's a saturation product. So you're not going to see the benefits of it until about 2 weeks of taking it daily. And then again, if you stop taking it, the benefits will last another 2 weeks until you're unsaturated again. But the benefits are beyond just your performance. It helps cognitive. There's research that shows that your nervous system fires better when you're on creatine. Your thought, you have better cognitive processes. Your reactions are faster. Everything is better. So it's a great wellness product. And what's really cool about it is it's not super psychoactive or anything like that, you usually don't feel any of the benefits or any type of crazy, woozy benefits. Not like a stimulant like caffeine or nothing like that. But because your body, produces it naturally, all it does is enhance whatever you're performing, and it gives you pretty much better energy. So the recommendation is about 5 grams a day, every day. If you skip a day, don't need to double up. If you take too much, though, the problem is you might have a little bit of stomach problems. But that's kind of the overview.
That's awesome. Well, we'll make it easier for people here to not worrying about what brand they should take or what type, because you actually have your own creatine that AFA creatine. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the thing I forgot to say was that monohydrate is the form that you want to take. There's a multiple forms. I think there's like a HCl form and all these other forms. But monohydrate is the most studied. That's the one that has most of the studies done, and it's been the most beneficial that they've seen. So monohydrate. But yes, we have one. We have three supplements. Creatine is one of them. So it is monohydrate, and it's been third-party tested, third-party verified, vegan, gluten-free, all the above for everyone. The scoop is 5 grams. So we do have AFA Performance Supplement. It is creatine, and it's the monohydrate version, so the one that we've been talking about. So yeah, we have it available. I think it's a 2-month supply. Is one bottle.
Awesome. And they can purchase that on your website. What's your website? I know I have it down here. It's afaprotraining.com.
Yeah.
And
So
you
there's
also offer, go ahead.
I was just saying the tab on the website. So it's afaprotraining.com, and we have it's an apparel and supplements brand or tab. So it'll say AFA, I believe, apparel and sups, and then we'll have the store on there. So it's a external store, but the link is in our website. So we have three products. We have a hydration and electrolytes product, a creatine product, and then beetroot product as well.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we're coming down to a couple of minutes here. Again, I know sleep is important. Again, when we're looking at it performing, we need to regenerate, we need to repair, we need to recover. And I know a lot of people are into the cryo baths and all these things. Again, food is important for all of those things, but sleep is so underrated, especially with underperforming, burning out, and a lot of people just don't relate sleep or quality sleep as a reason for maybe poor performance and stuff like that. And obviously we don't have time to get into that. Maybe we bring you back when we talk about that. So overtraining, again, there is no such thing. Yes, you can overtrain, but the issues become when there's lack of nutrition, there's lack of sleep, and it's also training with somebody who doesn't know when to stop loading a muscle, how often to load a muscle. And so that's why it's important to really follow, people who do this as a career, not as a side gig, when it comes to, the private training segment. So I also think a burnout is a mental component that also could be prevented with nutrition and sleep. And when I say nutrition, I'm not just talking about supplements. I'm talking about the food, right? The food that we eat.
Right.
So awesome. This has been great. I think this is such a huge. Again, we just talked about principles and kind of a foundation, right? And everyone's going to be a little bit different when it comes to customizing and calculating it for that individual, right? This is great. What would you want? Anything you want to share in closing when it comes to that goalkeeper who's looking to have that competitive advantage, when it comes to strength, plyometrics, speed, nutrition, supplementation, any final thoughts, for those that are going to be watching this episode?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is, we can sit here and talk about what to do in the weight room and how to train and the best way to, sleep, eat, and all that good stuff. But I think the heart of it starts in the effort of the athlete. If you want to play at the next level and you want to be the best athlete you can be, that has to start in your own head, in your heart, right? Like I'm here, we're here to help your performance if you want it, right? If you want it, then I have all the tools that I can help you. I think that the biggest thing is when the athletes step in here, I can give you all the tools, but you have to have the will and determination and the want to follow it and use the tools that I give you. So I can give you the best supplements, and I can give you the best training, and I can give you the speed training, and I can tell you what to do, how many to do, and when to rest. But all that effort has to come from you in the first place. And I think the best athletes that I have that I see the best progress in is they come in here and I don't have to tell them to warm up. I don't have to tell them to take their creatine. I don't have to tell them to eat. They come in, they say, yes, I had 2 meals already in me. They already started their warm up without me telling them. They know they show up to practice even outside of training every single day. So I think the biggest thing is like, obviously my job and my career and my passion is helping athletes get to the next level. But all I am is a tool, and if you don't have like that determination and that drive to play at the next level and to use these tools to the best of your ability and take advantage of everything that we offer, then it's just not going to be enough. So sleep, obviously, eat, sleep, hydrate, get your training in, get someone that knows what they're doing, and get the best advice. But the determination and the effort comes from the individual athlete on a self level.
That's awesome. Well, in closing, the word that came to mind as you're sharing all this is commitment. If you're not committed, it doesn't matter how much you know and what you agree with. If you're not committed, you'll never take advantage of everything that's being offered. So our goalkeepers need to be committed to be that at that ultimate level that they're shooting for. So this has been great. Marcos Papakosas with AFA Sports Performance.